Greetings, sixth graders. It is time for literature. Please take out your literature book. Today we are reading the story, The Dog of Pompeii. This is historical fiction. It is a fiction story, made-up story, about a real-life event that happened in history. Your assignment is going to be to read the story and answer person response questions 1 through 4. And we're going to start with the before you read page. So open up your books to page 545. 545. Meet the author, Louis Untermeyer. At 10, I fancied myself a storyteller, Louis Untermeyer remembered. My brother was a rewarding listener. Untermeyer made up adventures based on his favorite stories, such as The Arabian Nights and Jason and the Golden Fleece, as he and his brother fell asleep at night. As for school, Untermeyer could only say, I excelled in nothing. As an adult, Untermeyer became a jeweler. He also wrote poetry and edited poetry anthologies. Eventually, he became a full-time writer and editor. Louis Untermeyer was born in 1885 and died in 1977. This story was published in 1932. Reading focus. Have you ever responded to a weather emergency, such as warning of a flood, tornado, or hurricane? What was that like? So responding to it means taking action because there is some type of a weather emergency. Setting a purpose. Read The Dog of Pompeii. Find out about an emergency in Pompeii. Building background. The time and place. In AD 79, Pompeii was a city of around 20,000 people. Wealthy Romans liked its closeness to the Mediterranean Sea. Mount Vesuvius, the volcano that overlooked the city, had not erupted in several hundred years. Dun, dun, dun. Below you have the vocabulary preview, which you did that last week with the worksheet. So turn ahead to the first page of the story. I'm going to read just a little bit to you because there is something I want to point out. So please follow along. The Dog of Pompeii by Louis Untermeyer. Tito and his dog Bimbo, so Tito is the boy, Bimbo's the dog, Tito boy, lived, if you could call it living, under the wall where it joined the inner gate. They really didn't live there, they just slept there. They lived anywhere. Pompeii was one of the gayest of the Latin towns, but although Tito was never an unhappy boy, he was not exactly a merry one. Here they use the word gayest to mean gay as in happy, very happy. All right, top of the second page, 547. The streets were always lively with shining chariots and bright red tapestries. The open-air theaters rocked with laughing crowds. Sham bottles and athletic sports were free for the asking in the great stadium. Once a year, the Caesar visited the pleasure city, and the fireworks lasted for days. The sacrifices in the forum were better than a show. But Tito saw none of these. He was blind, had been from birth. He was known to everyone in the poorer quarters, but no one could say how old he was. No one remembered his parents. No one could tell where he came from. Bimbo was another mystery. As long as people could remember seeing Tito, about 12 or 13 years, they had seen Bimbo. Bimbo had never left his side. He was not only dog, but nurse, pillow, playmate, mother, and father to Tito. So Bimbo is the dog and Tito is the boy. Did I say Bimbo never left his master? Perhaps I'd better say comrade, for if anyone was the master, it was Bimbo. I was wrong. Bimbo did trust Tito alone exactly 3 times a day. It was a fixed routine, a custom understood by boy and dog since the beginning of their friendship, and the way it worked was this. Early in the morning, shortly after dawn, while Tito was still dreaming, Bimbo would disappear. When Tito awoke, Bimbo would be sitting quietly at his side, his ears cocked, his stump of a tail tapping the ground, and a fresh baked bread, more like a large round roll, at his feet. Tito would stretch himself, Bimbo would yawn, and then they would break fast. Have breakfast, yeah. At noon, no matter where they happened to be, Bimbo would put his paw on Tito's knee, and the two of them would return to the inner gate. Tito would curl up in the corner, almost like a dog, and go to sleep, while Bimbo, looking quite important, almost like a boy, would disappear again. In half an hour, he'd be back with their lunch. Sometimes it would be a nice fruit or a scrap of meat. Often it was nothing but a dry crust, but sometimes there would be one of those flat, rich cakes sprinkled with raisins and sugar that Tito liked so much. At supper time, the same thing happened, although there was a little less of everything, for things were hard to snatch in the evening with the streets full of people. Besides, Bimbo didn't approve too much of food before going to sleep. A heavy supper made boys too restless and dogs too stuffy. It was the business of a dog to sleep lightly with an ear open and muscles ready for action. Okay, so here we hear the dog, Bimbo, described multiple times, and he has some of the characteristics of a human. That is called anthropomorphism. Anthropomorphism. And it points out that an animal or another object sometimes is given human qualities. So you can say that Bimbo is caring. Bimbo takes care of Tito by bringing him a meal 3 times a day. Bimbo also acts as a pillow, so we know that he lets Tito, the boy, sleep on him. And he plays his nurse. So when Tito's not feeling well, Bimbo will nurse him back to health and give him what he needs. So those human characteristics represented in this case, in this story, in a dog, is called anthropomorphism. All right, your assignment is to finish reading the assignment and to answer questions 1 through 4, personal response 1 through 4, on page 555. Let's take a closer look at those. If you could change one thing in the outcome of the story, what would you change? This is personal response, the first one. If you could change one thing in the outcome of the story, what would you change? Or, if you'd rather answer this one, think back to the discussion in Reading Focus on page 545. Were your reactions to the emergency similar to those of Tito, the boy in the story? Pick one of those to answer. Number 1, recall. In Pompeii, where does Tito live and with whom does he live? Why does he live there? And what is his disability? Wow, that's a lot of questions. Where does Tito live? That's 1. With whom does he live? That's 2. Why do they live there? 3. And number 4, what is his disability? Make sure you answer all 4 of those. Number 2, what do some people in Pompeii say causes earthquakes? So what do they say causes earthquakes? Number 3, how does Bimbo save Tito's life? Ooh. Hopefully you read this story before you did the questions. Number 4, hundreds of years later, why are scientists surprised to find a dog in the ruins of this volcanic eruption? So why are they surprised to find a dog there? All right. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to read the story. You're going to do personal response. You pick which one. And answers 1 through 4. And you're going to fill out the Google form that is attached to this assignment. And that is all for today. And there we go. All right, time to say goodbye. All right, I hope you enjoyed this story. This is one of Mrs. Orrick's favorites. Not the favorite, but one of the favorites. Yeah, it's a good book, good story. All right, bye, 6th grade.